I love Norm. He is, along with Rebecca, my favourite Cheers character, so any story that focuses on Norm, I'm going to at least partly love. But I have to say, while No Help Wanted is a brilliant episode, it is also kind of hard to watch if you're a fan of Norm. This is the 14th episode of the second season of Cheers, directed by the wonderful James Burrows. And Diane convinces Sam to hire Norm as his accountant. It starts off pretty interestingly with everybody suspecting that Norm has been working as a dishwasher at Melville's, and Norm hasn't been very forward about this. He hasn't told anybody about this, but there are reasons for this suspicion. And then Norm's entrance is slightly different because when Norm enters Cheers, he's followed down the stairs by a pack of cats. Now, I love Norm, I love cats. It made me very, very happy. And it's just brilliantly done. It's very funny. And after that, Norm comes clean and says, "Yes, I've had to do this." The episode does make it seem like being a dishwasher is a very poor job to have. Most people don't grow up wanting to be a dishwasher, but it doesn't speak very kindly about people who are dishwashers. So they could have maybe been a little bit more positive about the fact that Norm at least had a job. But nevertheless, it did show that Norm wasn't happy and he was actually miserable, very depressed. And Diane convinces Sam to hire him as his accountant. And I have to say, I kind of felt the way Sam did, which I don't like. I don't like that I was feeling this way. And with a spoiler warning, I'll go into more detail with what I mean about that in a moment. But throughout it, Norm is very happy. He's really thrilled to be doing Sam's accounting. But Sam is still not sure about things. And Norm feels rejected at one point, and there's this really heartbreaking scene. And I don't want to spoil it just now, but you'll know which scene I mean if you've seen it. I'll discuss it in more detail in a moment. But there's a really heartbreaking scene where all of Norm's emotions just come out of him. And as a Norm fan, as somebody who really loves Norm, it was really difficult to see. It's also, it's some of the most animated Norm has ever been. It's like some of the most physical acting George Wentz ever had to do, because most of the comedy from Norm is when Norm is sitting on his seat at the end of the bar. He doesn't move around that much. So for George Wendt to actually be able to move around a lot more and use his body and get some comedy out of that, I thought was pretty great and a nice change. So I enjoyed it. It's great for Norm's character progression. There's some intense moments between Norm and Sam, but it is difficult. It's difficult for the right reasons because it shows that these are real human emotions and real issues that people face, but at the same time, they injected enough comedy in there to keep things light enough. So everything else I have to say is probably a spoiler. I'll discuss what I meant about having a similar reservation that Sam did, and I might discuss the scene with Norm in a bit more detail as well. So spoilers from now. I was genuinely, when Norm said that Sam would get something like, I think, $15,000 back, after that point, I was waiting for something to happen to show that Norm had screwed up or he'd done something wrong and that he wasn't good at his job. And that's kind of what Sam was feeling as well. And I feel bad for feeling that way because there was no real reason to think that other than what I know about Norm and the fact that sometimes he maybe comes across as lazy or not motivated. But there was no other reason for that. And when that didn't happen, I felt awful. And I'd love for somebody else to tell me they felt the same way because I really hope that that's just not me thinking that. But I did. I agreed with Sam, the way Sam thought about things, that it wasn't a good idea, that Norm wouldn't do it right. And it's awful to feel like that, but it's true. And the scene with Norm, the bit I loved is when George Went's just lying face down on the rug and his body's kind of twitching. And I just thought this is fabulous, and I really wish Norm got to move around a bit more. But obviously, it's very iconic that Norm spends a lot of time at the end of the bar. As the seasons go on, we do get more storylines with Norm away from that bar stool. I won't talk any more about that without spoiling it, but certainly it is something that we do get to see more and more of, so that's pretty great. But I enjoyed this episode as a Norm fan, but also as a Norm fan, it was hard to watch in places. Really brilliant episode, though. Coach had some great lines. I didn't write any of them down, but he had some great comedy as well. Definitely a strong episode, difficult at times, but always one that I'll be happy to watch.